With the return of Luke Skywalker in the Book of Boba Fett, the question has once more been raised about the practice of digitally crafted performances in film and television. While there are certainly arguments to be made on both sides, we thought it might be helpful to take a look back at the history of this practice in film so as to better understand how we got to this point and the implications of what it could mean for our future. This is Nerdist Now. The idea of digitally or otherwise creatively replacing an actor in a film or TV show is not a new one. If you've ever seen Apocalypse Now, you've possibly experienced this without even knowing. There's a 90% chance that if you're seeing the back of Martin Sheen's head, that it's actually his stand-in due to Sheen suffering a heart attack on set and being hospitalized for weeks. When Bruce Lee died during the filming of what would be his final film, Game of Death, rather than recast the role or scrap the film altogether, the filmmakers went to great lengths to rewrite the script and complete the project using the limited footage they had with Lee, only roughly around 12 minutes, along with stuntmen, archive footage of the actor, and even a famously ridiculous scene in which a still photo of Lee's face is used over the body of one of the stuntmen. Likewise, Bruce Lee's son Brandon Lee would go on to experience a similar fate after tragically dying from an on-set gun accident during the filming of The Crow. While Lee's sudden death was a shocking blow to the cast and crew, the decision was ultimately made to complete the film in his honor. Unlike his father, however, Brandon had already completed most of his work on the film and only had about 3 days left of shooting prior to his death. After some rewrites, the film was completed with the assistance of pre-shot footage, computer graphics, and a stunt double stand-in. This practice of digitally completing works with deceased actors would evolve and be used again in the 2000 film Gladiator after Oliver Reed's passing, as well as on the small screen in the hit HBO original series The Sopranos after the death of Nancy Marchand, who played Tony Soprano's mother. In both cases, the digital recreations come in more substantial roles that actually interact with co-stars, cobbling together performances based on pre-existing footage and then placing it onto a stand-in body. The results were questionable.
Fuck it, do what you want.
However, both these examples place the importance of narrative closure for those characters at the forefront of the decision. Neither looked perfect. If anything, the scene from The Sopranos has become infamous for how bad it is. But there seemed to be a justification and acceptance on behalf of the audience that there was a purpose to it that outweighed simply recasting or otherwise cutting the final scenes altogether. Toward the end of the 2000s, we began to see some light de-aging technology with some of the later X-Men films, as well as the critically acclaimed drama The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. One of the earliest uses of this technology in recent years was in the romantic comedy The Holiday, which used minor VFX for retouching actors' faces, along with digitally adding snow to a region of England that doesn't get snow. For the purposes of our trajectory though, the most important milestones in the technology come in the form of 2009's Terminator Salvation and 2010's Tron Legacy. Both serve as long-awaited sequels to decades-old franchises, which used digital technology to incorporate younger versions of central characters. In Terminator Salvation, the film largely revolves around a new cast and is set in a futuristic point in the Terminator timeline rather than the present day the previous films usually took place in. Arguably the most memorable aspect of the movie, however, outside of Christian Bale's infamous on-set meltdown, comes in the form of a surprise cameo during the film's climax in which a young version of Arnold Schwarzenegger emerges as the T-800. Meanwhile, Tron Legacy saw the return to the digital world of the original with a largely new cast of characters, along with the star of the first movie, Jeff Bridges.
Biodigital jazz, man.
However, Bridges not only played the older version of his character from the original, but more notably, the evil computer program version of his character, Clue. Clue was presented looking as Bridges did during the original movie with the assistance of de-aging technology.
Yeah.
While not perfect, the effects worked in the context of the movie as the character in question was a creation of the digital world and therefore was appropriate to not look entirely human. While neither of the movies themselves were major critical or commercial successes, the technology they showcased was. De-aging technology would go on to grow and evolve in the years following, most notably in Marvel movies like Ant-Man and Captain America: Civil War, and would generally become commonplace in Hollywood's tool belt moving forward, especially when it came to big franchises. However, 2016's Rogue One: A Star Wars Story may have been the biggest hinge point in the evolution of this technology that was noticed by mainstream mainstream audiences. Not only did the film feature a de-aged Princess Leia, but more egregiously saw the digital resurrection of Peter Cushing's Grand Moff Tarkin for a substantial role in the movie as well. While the recreation was done with the permission of Cushing's estate, the inclusion of the deceased actor left many questioning the ethics of such a decision regardless. Not only did it raise an ethical dilemma, but one of quality as well, where the effects seem excusable in scenarios like Tron, Terminator, or Captain America Civil War, where the characters themselves were meant to be more inhuman. In the case of Rogue One, the application of the technology seemed almost too ambitious for what it was capable of at the time. It seemed this was the tipping point where people began to ponder the Jurassic Park conundrum.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Later that year, when Carrie Fisher passed away and The Last Jedi released, it seemed as though the question came back to the forefront of the fandom and the entertainment industry at large, as everyone wondered if a completely digital Leia for Episode 9 would be next. Thankfully, that would not end up being the case. The Rise of Skywalker did see Leia make a return to close out the trilogy, but it was done more of the old-fashioned way, using pre-existing footage and creative editing rather than a full-fledged digital puppet. However, that was not the case for a flashback scene in the film involving a young Luke and Leia after the events of the Return of the Jedi. The majority of the scene involved the two wearing helmets, but ends with each lifting them to reveal uncanny valley digital nightmares of the young characters, which brings us to the present debate over Luke Skywalker's current role in the franchise. First appearing during the epic Season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, the Jedi Master arrives to help save the day at the last second and reveals himself to be Luke Skywalker, looking just as youthful as we last saw him in Return of the Jedi. The quality of the effect itself was still questionable, but certainly a step above those used in Rise of Skywalker. Overall, the appearance was brief, and the intentional impact of it was more than successful. While Mark Hamill was apparently on set to film reference for the scene, it seems that none of that reference footage was ever used in the final product. Furthermore, when it came to Luke's return in the Book of Boba Fett, the actor was entirely absent from the process altogether. Deepfake technology aside, the more ethically questionable choice in recreating young Skywalker is that Luke's voice was also a complete work of digital creation. Lucasfilm used vocal cloning technology called Respeecher to achieve this effect by using reference audio from that time, including interviews and even Star Wars audiobooks that Hamill had recorded around that age. So this raises the question, why? Why not have Mark Hamill, a skilled voice actor, at least record the audio? Why not hire a new, younger actor altogether? I guess really at the end of the day, why do any of this at all? Is it for the betterment of storytelling or for the betterment of our collective nostalgia? And what does this mean for the future of not only Marvel and Star Wars, but all of fandom and cinema as well? Nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and it seems that we are currently living in an age of addiction. Lots of fans want these things that are important to them from their childhood to stay the same, and it's understandable. We need that constant, that source of comfort, especially in times like we find ourselves in now that are anything but consistent or comforting. We've seen our modern style of storytelling dramatically shift into an ever-expanding web that flows backwards and forwards, inward and outward. While this method of storytelling is nothing necessarily new for other mediums, it does pose a unique challenge to film and television in the long run. So the question must now become, what is more important to the future of our storytelling? Clinging to the past and preserving things in a seemingly authentic tribute to our memories, or allowing storytelling to evolve and move forward as it has always done? After all, stories are a reflection of us. They're how we process and understand the world. And one of the most important things about stories in that way is that, like us, they must eventually come to an end. It's part of what makes stories and actors and their characters so special. That's not to say we should never see characters like Luke Skywalker again, but if we are to do so, it should be done with a sense of purpose and meaning, not a hollow shell painted with a familiar face. Regardless of your feelings about The Last Jedi, and I know some of you have many, Mark Hamill and Rian Johnson brought something new and personal to the character. And the same could be said for Alden Ehrenreich in Solo, A Star Wars Story. If they had opted to have a digitally de-aged Harrison Ford puppet in the movie instead, it may have satisfied the desire for a cohesive picture of nostalgia, but it would have denied the humanity and creativity that the new cast brought to the role and narrative. Furthermore, while this technology certainly has a place in modern storytelling, it has also had a ripple effect in the real world as well. We've already seen how easy it is for VFX and deepfake specialists to create almost completely believable videos of world leaders spreading fake information, and the technology is only getting better and easier for everyday people to use. With this type of technology in a rapidly changing culture like ours, both online and the real world, there needs to be some sort of responsibility in place. Sure, it's fun and intriguing to see Samuel L. Jackson look like he did in the 90s for Captain Marvel, but when films are going to tremendous lengths to bring back dead actors, we should be taking a step back. In 2019, a now canceled film titled Finding Jack was on the receiving end of criticism after the production announced that it would be creating a fully CGI James Dean to play a role that, according to the filmmakers, only Dean could play, despite him dying in 1955. There is a fine line between embracing new advances in filmmaking and straight up digitally digging up an actor who did not give their consent to be replicated. It's a weird subject to discuss because even though it's been on our screens and in our theaters for years, this movement is still in its infancy. It makes sense that we want to hold on to the things that brought us joy, but as humans we grow and age and change, and films need to continue to do the same as well. It's a major part of what allows art like film and television to evolve and blossom. Is digitally de-aging Clark Gregg going to slam the brakes on filmmaking as an art form? No. But when we've reached the point that some films are bringing dead actors back to life or entirely fabricating younger versions of popular characters just because they can, that sets a dangerous precedent and opens the floodgates for more questionable uses of this kind of technology to bleed through. It's a powerful tool that we don't yet fully appreciate, and as the famous saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility. Or, you know, you can be like Bruce Willis and rent your face to a Russian cell phone company. What a time to be alive. But tell us, what do you think? Are you okay with using CGI to bring actors back from the dead? Do you think digital de-aging is taking roles away from younger actors? Where do you draw the line when it comes to replicating someone's likeness? Let us know in the comments below, and for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.